Well, Police Chief Inspector Tom Thompson joins us now from Northampton. Can't we just have male and female police officers anymore?
Good morning.
Morning.
We have got male and female police officers, but the headgear wasn't really brought in for that. We decided to change our hats in order to make sure that protection for men and women was the same, because it became quite apparent that the male and female helmets were at different levels of protection.
Right, but if you'd only said that, there wouldn't have been any controversy. But you went further and you made a point of saying you want to encourage non-binary people in Britain to become police officers, i.e. people who don't identify as male or female. And I guess my point to you is, why should the police be pandering to a tiny, tiny proportion of the country who decide they don't want to be called man or woman?
Yeah, when we looked at what other forces had done, it did catch my eye that particularly Cheshire Police had got some really good feedback when they introduced exactly this hat, that the transgender community had demonstrated that it was actually a barrier to joining the police, because they had to identify male and female to choose their headgear. So it was part of the business case, and it wasn't something I'd even thought about. And that attracted my eye.
Right, but most transgenders, unless I'm mistaken, they do identify as male or female. They just switch. Right? I'm talking about non-binary people, which is what you said apparently in your statement when you announced this. Non-binary means people who don't identify as male or female. And my point to you again, I mean, look, there's a school in North London that's doing this with the pupils. They are apparently going to allow boys who identify as boys to wear skirts because of this gender neutrality march. Are you prepared now, if one of your male officers wants to, in the interest of gender neutrality, wear a skirt to work? Is he going to be allowed to?
I can't answer for that, because that's in relation to uniform. The hats were personal protective equipment, and we wanted to make sure that men, women and transgender people were able to have exactly the same protective personal equipment, which is slightly different to uniform.
I get that, but I think the reason we wanted you on was because you didn't just state it was about safety. You did make a point of saying you wanted to be open to non-binary people. And again, that is people who don't identify as male or female. I have a problem with this. I think that this is leading now to a lot of young people, and we're seeing it at more and more schools, coming in saying, I no longer identify as male or female, I'm non-binary. For the police to be actively encouraging this seems to me a bit of a slippery slope. So again, I put it to you, the logical extension of what you're doing means that pretty much anybody can come into the police now and demand to be gender neutral in any way they see fit. There would effectively be no gender-related rules or regulations at all.
Well, we were very keen to make sure that the police officers that serve the community are like the community, and not everybody in the community looks like me or thinks like me. And the police service nationally, and particularly Northants, are waking up to the fact that there's people out there that we should have within our organisation whose characteristics might be invisible to us. So it's really important that actually we make sure that our future planning and our equipment, which keeps officers safe, isn't actually a barrier to all kinds of people coming in.
There are 71 different ways to identify gender now on Facebook, officially, right? If you have members of the police force now who wish to identify as gender fluid or two-spirit person, I believe is another one, are you going to allow that? Will that be their official gender classification?
It's a really interesting challenge, because a lot of our systems, crime systems for victims and our HR systems, historically haven't had any reference to anything other than male and female, particularly stop search forms. We're now looking nationally to work out how we record people's gender. Now that, as you say, there are numerous different ways of doing that, how do we accurately record people's, the way that people identify? Because, for example, stop search, it's all about how they identify to us. It's not our opinion of them. So we are changing nationally in many ways.
I mean, when I talked about this the other day, I'm not saying you're wrong and I'm right, by the way. I have an opinion, you have an opinion. I would say that most of the reaction we're getting to this interview, as indeed when we had all this last week, is negative from the public. They believe the gender-neutral debate is beginning to be quite a force in this country, and that what it inevitably leads to is just a breakdown in gender altogether, where eventually it simply won't be allowed. You guys might be enforcing a law that it's criminal to identify as male or female, because such is the power of the move and the lobby group behind it, that actually gender in the end becomes an offensive, if not illegal, thing.
Well, times are changing, and the way that a lot of us saw the world in the past is changing. And again, the police, through legislation and through our own training and our experiences, we're going to have to change to adapt.